She just says, AI, make the guy I wish I was married to. All right, so we're still in Genesis 6. We got partway through this. And I wanted to backtrack a little bit because there was something that I wanted to mention that I hadn't thought about until actually last week, and I was holding off on it and didn't know how to answer it or think about it. But let's look, we got, just to summarize, we've got where, because I don't want to beat a dead horse because we're getting tired of talking about giants and Nephilim and all this stuff, but we got where the Nephilim were on the earth, and we think these are giants, and they're essentially filled with evil, and they're taking over. They're just filled with violence and evil and don't really have any good direction. And in verse 5, starting there, it says, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground. For I regret that I have made them, but found favor in the eyes of the Lord." All right, look at that verse 7. Is there anything in there that he says he is not going to wipe out? Or is there anything in there that's left out of that list of things?
Sea creatures, maybe?
Sea creatures. Now, this is something, when I was looking at this, thinking about this, a global flood, do you know what without a miraculous protection or a miraculous event, what would a global flood do to the sea creatures?
It would displace them, wouldn't it? Saltwater. Yeah,
It would kill
freshwater.
them. Because when you think about it, saltwater fish and freshwater animals, there are a few that can survive in what we call brackish water, which is kind of a salty freshwater mix. But you would totally disrupt the ocean salinity, which is the amount of salt in the water. And it would completely destroy all sea creatures. Not just that, there'll be a change in pressure and temperature, because all these physical laws of nature, and Boyle's law, and all these other laws that I can't remember right offhand, Pascal, I don't even try to remember them all. But because of all these laws of science, a global flood would have killed and destroyed all fish, things that dwell in the water. But he does not mention them in this list, which what I can infer, or what I try to infer from that, is that there was some kind of protection. Because I don't think Noah was going to build an aquarium on the ark. Although with this pitch he used, he probably could have if it had access to something else, like acrylic or something. But anyway, I just thought, because I was sitting there thinking, what would be an argument against a global flood? And the argument would be, well, that'd kill all the fish. But when I read this verse here, it got me thinking, well, God did not mention fish. He destroyed everything but them. So there must have been some kind of miraculous protection over them. And of course, as you know, when the flood's waters receded, I mean, there's going to be new places, new land masses, new places of water. So there would have been a lot of changes from this. But anyway, he talks about all of human race had become evil. But we got this guy, Noah, who'd found favor in the eyes of the Lord. So look at verse 9. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. He had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all people on earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both of them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood, is what the NIV says. Of course, we're all familiar with what? Gopher. Guess what? Nobody knows or has a clue what gopher wood is. Gopher wood was probably a generic term or lost in translation. Now the NIV says cypress. Some people think it could have been cedars because you had Lebanon, and then the acacia tree is another one. You would have had to have a very durable, would have had good tensile strength type of wood. something that would have been long lasting. But cedar is known for a lot of this. So it's possible it's cedar, but it's possible, or cypress. It's possible that any one of these could have been here. So I thought it was interesting that the NIV actually says cypress rather than gopher wood. And he says, make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. And it could have been that some people think that the gopher wood, the gopher part meant that it was actually a pitched wood, like a treated wood. You treat it with this stuff. But you coat it with pitch inside and out. This is what makes it waterproof. This is how you are to build it. Somebody read 15 for me.
This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high.
How high?
30.
30. So essentially that's probably a horrible drawing. So what is a cubit typically? It don't look like the ark that you see in Sunday school with a rainbow of it and then Noah waving his hand out right here. All right, so this is little church ark. This is a adult ark. So what is cubits? Well, you typically say from the elbow to the end of the hand, but the average length is around 18 inches, which is a foot and a half.
That's 450 feet.
450 feet,
75 feet wide.
75 feet, and then 45 feet. And then you divide it into how many? Keep going. Somebody read. Keep reading. What's the next verse? They divide it into 3 levels, right?
Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof of an opening 1 cubit high all around.
So you've got 3 stories with a hole going around the top that's about a foot and you said 1 cubit, so about a foot and a half hole in here. You could not, if you made this thing completely solid, you probably would not be very comfortable, you couldn't breathe, so you had to have some circulation in there. How big is the rudder?
Rudder.
It's a trick question. There's no rudder. How big are the sails?
Not one.
No sails. What?
And 1 door.
1 door, and it says put it in the side. Now, when it says put it in the side, does that mean here? Does it mean right here? You gotta get the animals in. So it's hard. I'm just sitting there thinking it would be hard for me to design a boat where I put my opening here at the bottom, which is just probably going to be underwater. It makes me wonder if it's even right here. But anyway, what you do is your side has got to be able to be where it drops down where you can load the animals in. So regardless, I don't know where it is. It was just hard for me to get this part.
Well, they would have made ramps inside for the 3 levels. They'd make ramps inside for 3 levels, make a ramp, enter the boat
Wherever you want to. So it's just hard. We always picture it being in the bottom, but it would be hard for me I'd be scared to death that something's gonna leak in this door. But anyway, you got a door in the side to load these animals in. Is anywhere else where an ark is mentioned? Should be Ark of the Covenant. Is there anywhere else? Moses. That's it. That's what I was looking for. Guess what? All those arks were shaped like that. So an ark is not built like a fishing boat or a sailboat. It's built like what? It's a container that floats. It's almost like a barge without a rudder or an engine or anything. This thing was meant just to float. It was meant just to sit. The water's going to pick it up and it's going to go where God wants it to. Because now let's think about why did he not tell them, let's put a rudder on this thing and some sail? What would that do?
That would mean you can control it.
That would put Noah in control of some of the things, wouldn't it? So this is part of testing Noah's faith. But God is telling Noah, I want you to build, I'm going to put you in this box and you're going to have to trust me. How many of y'all would have gotten in that? Well, how many people got in it? 8 people. And we said last week how many people were possibly on the earth? 7 billion possibly? Preached for 100 years while building it. But anyway, from what I can remember, these dimensions are the perfect dimensions that shipbuilders build today for barges. And barges are not meant to go fast. Barges are meant to just carry a load. Now, barges do have engines and stuff because they got a place to be. But Noah's place is he just wants to survive. All right. So God kind of what he was doing when he gave him these dimensions. These are the dimensions that boat builders today would use to build a floating barge. Well, I don't know. He says it's 50 cubits or 75 foot in breadth, and he doesn't. And he says it's. It would throw it off, I would think, if you tried to make it wider at the top, because we got this length being. I guess but you'd have to. He doesn't say that. He just says this is the breadth of it. So it would be like a rectangular box. You could have built a gym, yeah, but we don't have any that it was built in a different way. You always have that picture of that slanted roof at the top that you see in children's stories, but really what you've got is you've got this just open space for them to have air move through, and then this is probably where the birds that are eventually loose from. So it says make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door on the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I'm going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens. Every creature that has the breath of life in you, life in it, on earth will perish. Now, does anybody else, this version says every creature has the breath of life. Anybody's version say something different? Does anybody's version say something about nostrils?
What verse?
17. I think there's a version out there that says the breath of life in their nostrils, which also would go against killing fish, because fish don't breathe through nostrils. They breathe through gills. I came across that last night. I thought, well, that was interesting that it said nostrils. Everything on earth will perish, but I will establish my covenant with you. So we've got the first fall of man with a new covenant with Adam and Eve, and they had a new covenant. Then you got the second fall of man right here prior to Noah and the flood with all this, with the sons of God and daughters of men, and he got a new covenant. So we've got 2 falls and two new covenants here. Actually, really at this time it's the 3rd covenant. You are to bring in the ark of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and of every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten, stored away as food for you and for them. Noah did everything just as God commanded them. All right, so let's talk a few things. You told you, we're gonna erase this because I know y'all. Did everybody write this down, draw it? I know y'all wanted to draw it. Get a little refresher course on what the earth looked like. And I'll try to do this fast so we don't lose class time. But the earth, you got this, it's the same color. You got this shield of vapor or water around the earth. You got your mass, however big it is. It sounds like it's kind of place. I guess it could have been others, but anyway, we just said there's one place. This is all water around it. I talked about how this vapor protected man from UV damage. UV damage affects your DNA, causes us to age, causes our cells to mutate, and causes all kinds of things. Causes a lot of health problems, but this would have kept us from that UV light. Another thing it would have done, it would have created a greenhouse effect, so everything probably would have been green and lush, just like a tropical paradise. And what was everybody's food at this time? Vegetation. Everybody was vegetarians. Every animal ate plant. And I also talked about how reptiles, so you've got at this point are vegetarians. They're in a warm, moist environment. And what was the other thing I told y'all about reptiles? As long as they're alive, what are they doing? Scare you. They grow every year alive. And how old was Methuselah when the flood came? How many years do we calculate from the time they start giving them ages? Was it from Adam to the flood? Roughly between 16 and 2,000. Lifespan of a lot of these reptiles that live a lot longer than we do, guys. So let's say a tortoise lifespan today is 120. You exponentially multiply that times 10. How many years is that? 1,200 years. A tortoise that lived 1,200 years would have been how big? Been massive.
You saying snakes really that big? Well, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Save that joke for later. So this is where I think our dinosaurs came from, okay? God told them to put every creature on the ark. So did you think he put dinosaurs on the ark? I think he did put dinosaurs. I think there were dinosaurs on the ark. But what happens is, we're going to find out, this goes away because this is where it had never rained prior to the flood. Because all this falls on the earth. So that UV protection is gone. Then you probably have an ice age around this time too. That might be why you have these flash frozen woolly mammoths and stuff that happen at the same time, because when this falls, you're going to have a dramatic fast freeze, okay? Especially in parts that are farther away from the sun. So reptiles were probably brought in at their smaller sizes. And after the flood, what does God limits man's lifespan to? Roughly 120 years. Well, he just dropped it by 10%, back to where, well, more than that, 10 times. He dropped it 10. You guys are living 1,000 years almost 10 times. So now, I think personally, this is what happened to your dinosaurs. You had huge, gigantic reptiles on the earth that died in the flood, but then these dinosaurs were still alive after the flood, but now you see them as Komodo dragons and lizards and turtles. These things, you can see that dinosaurs are still around. Dinosaurs did not go extinct. Certain of them would have been, because they would have been hunted or something. They're used for food, just like a lot of animals went extinct. But this would explain where our dinosaurs went, okay? Also would explain why you have these flash frozen woolly mammoths in places. There's also some places where up here, say up here, they found places in Alaska where you have animals. There's just one miner who has found this place that is just full of animal bones, and it's all located in one place. And the way it's made, it's almost like stuff like pushed into a direction and then died in a hole. Okay, this would explain a lot of the geological changes we have and a lot of the fossil record that we have. Of course, the food he would have taken would have been fruits, vegetables, roots, whatever they would have been eating at the time. And then it says, verse 22, Noah did everything just as God commanded him. Verse 1 of chapter 7. The Lord then said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you, now he changes it a little bit here. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made. So why do you think he went from saying a pair to say, I want you to take 7 pairs of every clean animal? That, and also they're going to know that God's going to change the rules. Clean animals will be able to be eaten. We don't have Levitical law yet, though. How does he know what's clean and what's unclean? God would have had to fill him in on that. But we don't, I just thought that hit me last night as I was reading this. And this would have had to be God's intervention again. And we have to assume that Noah did not go out and hunt all these animals.
Well, it says that
Will come to you. So he's going to know what's clean and what's unclean. He's going to send the clean animals in by pairs of 7 and the unclean by pairs. Well, reading about it, the neighbors probably thought Noah was crazy anyway. And yeah, there's a crazy old man preaching. He's building a boat in the middle of a desert. Nothing more worthless than a boat in the middle of the desert, is there? Say desert. It wouldn't have been desert, but no, in the middle of no coast. He says, I will send around the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made. And Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters came on the earth, and Noah and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. How long did he work on this ark? Over 100 years. Yeah. Of clean and unclean animals, of birds, and of all creatures that move along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark as God had commanded Noah. And after the 7 days, the flood waters came on the earth. The 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth. Remember, we talked about it never rained to this point. The water came from the vapor at the top. It came down. It says the floodgates of the heavens were open. So that would be the top above the earth. And the springs of the great deep. So you have almost like geysers come up. To cover the whole earth in days, this would have had to have happened like this way. On that very day, Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, together with his wife and the wives of his 3 sons, entered the ark. They had with them every wild animal according to its kind, all livestock according to their kinds, every creature that moves along the ground according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind. Everything with wings. Pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life in them came to Noah. Did that say nostril in anybody's verse there?
That's on down in verse like 30, 29.
Oh, okay. No, it's in there somewhere. So, pairs of all creatures that have gone the river came Noah into the ark. The animals going in were male and female of every living thing, as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord shut him. 40 days the flood kept coming on the earth, and then as the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits. So, how high was it above the mountains? 20-something feet. Every living creature that moved on land perished. Birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, mankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils, there it is, breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left and those with him in the ark. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. Okay, it rains 40 days, 40 nights. You have water coming up from the bottom, water coming from the top. Even the highest mountains the water goes 20-something feet above that. Everything dies that breathe through the nostrils. Okay, that would say your sea creatures, even your mammal sea creatures don't breathe through nostrils. They breathe through air holes in their back and stuff like that. So everything in the sea would have survived. And the water stayed over for 150 days. It flooded the earth for 150 days. Now it gradually starts coming down, but so water actually stays longer than 150 days. But it was up at its maximum for 150 days. Do you think there were any other boats at this time? Why? Well, they didn't say anything about deer at this point either, but we probably had deer. I think there's a reason why that description of that kind of boat was for Noah, because it would have survived those waters. Other boats would have been made to direct and would have had keels on them, would have been shaped like this. They had water. If they lived on the coast, they could have, but these vessels would not have been made to survive this. So even if people had jumped in a boat, they would not have survived this, because you got water coming from the top and the bottom. These things would have tilted over, they would have been gone.
Or it looks like all the land was.
That's what it looks like.
Or would the oceans been on the other side, or were there any oceans to start with?
Well, the whole earth was covered with water. If you read the creation account, the water subsided and formed land. So it was almost like water spread apart and land came up. So it looks like this would have been kind of what we call Pangea. Y'all have heard that term growing up. Pangea would have been what the earth, that's what they think earth looked like at one time. Because we're going to read about a guy named Peleg. You ever heard that term? They're going to say the day of Peleg is when the earth started dividing, continental divide. Okay? It feels like right now the earth is like this. So even if it's like this, you're still going to have coastlines. Okay?
If man were not eating fish at that time, there would have been no need for a boat.
No.
Really.
You're right. They wouldn't have. Point. They were just adventurous and they wanted to. You also have at this time, we talked about Cain. When he left, they formed cities and they did all kinds of stuff. They were developing all kinds of technology. So they even did iron and bronze, which according to our history books, you have the Bronze Age and then you have the Iron Age. It was a large progression in time. So we don't know. I was just throwing out some thought questions there. Let's see, where we get? Flood received chapter 8. God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and livestock that were with. Okay, let's back up for a second. No telling how many animals were on this ark. Something I read said that an average size animal, small livestock, like a sheep, the ark could have held like them or something. Can't remember what the number was, but it was huge. So if God sent all animals at a specific size, this ark would have been packed full. If you've got thousands of animals, how do you pack enough food for all those animals and the 8 people living there? And after 120 days, wouldn't it have gone bad?
I thought about that earlier, and at the time leading up to the flood when you were trying to prepare for it, how long would it last?
Yeah. What you kind of, the theories is that these animals were put into a hibernation state. Because think about it, if they're not, what else are you having to do every day? But not yet, they're all vegetarians. But you would have been cleaning up their waste. You would have been having to clean up their waste, separate them. It almost seems like for this to have happened, they would have had to put into a hibernation state. They would have had to have been younger animals, or at least smaller size. And your food, you would have had to have carried things that could have been preserved and stored. We can find ways to store things today that last that long. I'm sure that they would have found ways too. Like wouldn't store your apples and onions and stuff like that with different things, because they would cause other things to ruin. Stuff that God gives them knowledge for. But there's a lot of things, there would have been a lot of preparation other than just, here's the dimensions, build this, and I'm gonna make it happen. So a lot of things went into this operation.
They're not gonna be eating 3 meals a day, most likely, like we do anyway.
Well, yeah, they didn't live to eat like I do. They waking up, okay, well, 3 meals am I gonna have today? And what, or more than that, I'm like a hobbit. What am I gonna have for first and second breakfast? So, 1 chapter 8, God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were within the ark, and sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. A wind over the earth. What does wind typically represent? Spirit. Which makes me wonder, was this a true wind, or was this God just sending the Spirit over the earth to get things in motion? Don't know. But the water started receding. The springs of the deep and the floodgates of the heaven had been closed, and the rain had stopped falling from the sky. The water receded steadily from the earth. At the end of 150 days, the waters had gone down, and on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Now remember, that does not say Mount Ararat. That says the mountains of Ararat. Do y'all know where the mountains of Ararat are? Turkey, Armenia, close to the Syrian border. Okay? Waters continued to recede until the 10th month. So look at this. I mean, on this, it was completely flooded for 120 days. After 150 days, it starts going down. And then it says it continues to recede for 10 more months. So, I mean, they're on this thing a long time. And on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains become visible. Can you think about what's your hope? You kind of, maybe God put you to sleep for 120 days.
I read earlier, that means it's dropped back to 22 feet.
Dropped 20, yeah, it dropped 22 feet.